I'm going to start today with talking about lies. So in honor of the US presidential campaigns, as an American, I'm just simply glad to get this chapter over with, no matter one's particular predilections for one side or the other. But the truth is that most of us respond to marketing that's tailored for us in some way. And these elections and a very, very good example for this kind of targeted type of messaging that exists. And so from marketers, from heads to teams to agencies, often have no idea whether something is going to work or not, but we will try our best and we will put out there to the best of our ability. But sometimes we don't really know what we're doing. So in particular, I started my professional career not in marketing, but actually as a background in biology and jazz history. And somehow I've found myself here. And on the surface, though, biology and marketing, they couldn't seem more different from each other. I mean, after all, we're talking about something that is considered quote-unquote organic versus the sort of artificial kind of machine-based messaging that we talk about. But I want to challenge that and say, and ask, do you think those are really so diametrically opposed after all? Because for anyone who really works in this arena, I think we understand that when we're looking at marketing and we're looking at operations and we're looking at systems of biology, they're about systems design. We're all after an ability to design something that's smart, something that is self-sustaining, something that improves over time, and hopefully learns over itself. So today what I'm going to talk about actually is the Economist journey, digital transformation over the last couple of years. That was a very, very significant shift, and how we're actually approaching contextualization of our content being a content-first company, the context of our users and everyone that engages with us, and how we're actually utilizing that to move towards a personalization of one-to-one marketing and the design of systems for such. Great. So first, quick background. I think the brand itself doesn't need too much of an introduction, but I think what is useful to know is that The Economist is a profitable newspaper, and it has been for a very long time. The company's enjoyed steady growth over decades, and especially over about the last 12 years or so, when digital was being tracked. You can see digital has been growing very, very steadily, along with all the other bundles that often include the print editions. But like any other publication in the industry, we face a big problem. We've faced a big problem with advertising revenues declining dramatically. There was an understood need to be able to shift our business over to subscription-based revenue, and the problem was that advertising was. Sorry, this is. There we go. So the overall level of profitability was very good, but there was a giant elephant in the room. In the face of the declining advertising revenue, what were we going to do with subscription? We knew we wanted to do it, but there was a problem because there was a level of saturation that we were already reaching in existing methods that we were using to target folks. So we needed to approach it in a new way and find a way to actually make it for the huge shifts that were going on in the industry. I'll figure this out, I swear. Okay, I think I'm good now. I'm not going to touch this thing. So, right, for decades, we had positioned ourselves as a kind of handbook for success for white collar workers, in the corporate world, and it was very, very successful. But the problem is that over time, the brand itself became very firmly entrenched into this sort of corporate elitism. And that really created a lot of issues with brand perception and for us to be able to grow. There was saturation inside of the market, and we could actually see it, from the prior slide where revenue was slowing down. So, like so many other companies, we were trying to target millennials, quote unquote, and exactly what that meant. But understanding that we were actually looking for young and globally curious audiences around the world. The problem was really how to find them. And while we'd always traded on having some very, very good creative executions, we were about to start doing this again. We'd committed to a very new mantra, and that was a promise to ourselves to be ruthless around the measurability of anything that we were putting money against. Any kind of paid media had to be trackable, and so that both would open up some new possibilities, but also would kind of destroy some of the very well-loved types of executions that were happening in cities across the world. And so there was an understanding that we needed to create a new response to the brand. And so out of that, we had created something called the Brand Response Initiative, which is born from this. So out of the Brand Response Initiative, we knew that we had to change perceptions. New statistics or revised statistics where you've got adults spending 3 hours or more a day on their phones. In some statistics, and especially in North America, you've got more than half of consumers using ad blocking in some way. We knew that the efficacy of these traditional methods were not going to be scalable anymore, and they were fizzling out. And we had to build a workflow that would be able to be smart and to be replicable, and really would be something that would be a designed system and something that wouldn't require just teams and teams of people to manage manually. So we knew we needed to create a system, or we needed to really create an ecosystem, a machine with dynamic inputs and outputs, so we built one. We built one with no real technology background. There was a lot of traditional marketing, traditional digital marketing going on, as we'll call it. My particular role came in from being a developer for 15 years and then managing agile teams and coming in and bringing this kind of thinking into it. And so we started to build a team around building a machine. The first challenge was we knew how to draw, historically, we knew how to draw in eyes and ears into the brand, what we were about, what we had to say, what the content was. But with great creative and great messaging, there was a problem of scale. We had a lot of teams that were working in silos. There were teams that were maybe putting out a couple thousand, emails a day. Maybe 10,000 was kind of a big deal. But the problem was that we knew we had to amplify. But while we were amplifying, we also had to make sure that we still had the ability not to lose fidelity in the message that we were putting out there. So as I mentioned, the challenge was actually creating not just a system, but an ecosystem to bring people in so that once they were in, we could find them again, and we could basically retarget the hell out of them. But as you'll see, one of the things that we're working on is we wanted to create a persistent profile around a person so that as they engaged with us, any bit of media that we put out there, we knew more and more about them, and we were smarter and smarter with what we were able to give them to begin with. And so the first system we built, looking back a couple of years, really felt kind of cobbled together with tape and a lot of good intentions. The existing digital organization was, as I'd mentioned, it was highly regionalized, highly siloed. There were 5 regions: North America, UK, EMEA, APAC, Latin America, all separate teams, all separate operations, and of course, all separate platforms. All in all, when we looked at operations globally on a technology basis, we had about 76 platforms. 76 platforms, agencies, languages, all mashed together that required a completely different management, and there was no way that this was going to happen in a single digital organization. So we blew it up. We took all of it, we blew it all up, but with a sound hypothesis to prove out, we restructured. So what was created was this global digital acquisitions team, and it was a team where not only was it about silo breaking, but for the first time it was where content, technology, and data leaders had equal seats at the table. And strategy was really talked about from the very get-go, and ideas were around the table which were either technology first, or data first, or content first, rather than being content first and trying to fit tools into what we were doing. So we tore it down, we rebuilt it to support the way that we thought it should be run. And so it turned out very well. The brand response initiative, which we initially just were hoping for about 500,000 new prospects to bring in. Actually, in 9 months, in a year, we were looking at 500,000, but in 9 months, we decided to end it and go for brand response 2 because we were doing so well we had to do something else. We went to 4 million, and conversions went through the roof, especially on an attributed basis. And we also had to hit a very, very interesting and useful milestone, which was that for the first time in the newspaper or magazine's history, we were making enough revenue from subscription-only basis to support the production of the content, both from a paper and digital perspective. And it really shifted the way that we were able to continually invest, and it really shifted marketing from being this thing on the side that people knew we had to do, to shift it into this place where there was a great opportunity to actually lead the company into where it needed to be and transform it from the inside out. So that in itself was a great win for us. But besides the increase in the prospects and the subscriptions, we were able to see a significant impact in the change in very, very, very key areas in what we were considering core parts of what we considered brand impact for us. And through some North American research we completed, we learned that trying to move that, it's not working. We could see that the people were actually responding to what we were doing by creating this machine that was finding them at multiple journey steps and making sure that each of these steps are tracked and measured. And for the first time, we could model out our holistic impact of all the media that we were putting out there. So for that, we won some very great recognition out of it. There were for the first time in my career, I'd won an award for something that I did, which you don't really get too many awards being a developer or agile project person. But digital marketing loves to give awards and have great award shows. So we won some recognition for it, which was really, really awesome. But the real reward and also the challenge that came with it was that we got more investment and we got more trust, but we were starting 2016, and because we were successful, we had to figure out how to be even better at it, which leads us into this year. We started 2016 with double the budgets that we had last year. We went from about £1.5 million to about £3 million. We also had a 50% increase in headcount. The problem was that being a sort of a bit of a small and scrappy team with kind of a really good idea and some smart people to execute on them, now we had to grow into something else. And so what were we going to do? And there was a lot of challenge with it, because with media, we were already playing with advanced persona targeting. We were already optimizing our spend in our programmatic channels very smartly. The content, we were already implementing some automated dynamic creative. And on the tech ops side, we were already connecting all the plumbing together and starting to be able to segment people very smartly. So where were we going to go from there? So the first thing we did was we invested in global research. So armed with some of this thinking and these tools, we had to figure out where were we going to apply these kinds of learnings. Well, research showed that there were about 73 million English-speaking, globally curious prospects in key markets around the world. And we also invested in local research, with North America being our biggest market. And our recent research in North America also tells us something about where audiences will naturally graze. And so one of the things we found out that the thing was that the web alone can actually be a very, very, very lonely place. So especially once you've reached a point of saturation. So television, digital out of home, radio, these all became channels, many times considered traditional marketing channels, that became available to us again. We've been working with some very, very, very smart partners and agencies who are able to provide a reopening of some of these channels because they're trackable. And I'll show you one of them with television, the case study in a second. So while there were a lot of these upper funnel channels that we were looking at, here we go. The challenge for us in looking at bigger budgets and more people and trying to advance what we were doing was we had to figure out how to amplify. And so I'm going to bring it back to biology just for 1 second and look for inspiration in a simple cell. A cell knows how to specialize, a cell knows how to replicate, knows how to amplify its presence, but still maintain and understand what it needs to do. So what's the cell know that we don't? What can I actually learn from this to transpose into digital marketing and technology and what we can do? Cells know that in order to thrive in a multifaceted, complex machine, it can't lose its ability to know exactly what it needs to do in its particular function in time and space. And so to be able to amplify brand response, we needed to take our marketing our online marketing channels further up the funnel, while also at the same time specializing and pushing deeper in to target our content to folks to engage them on an ongoing type of content discovery journey. But we needed to amplify even more because the first year of brand response we did great, but we had to go even higher. So as I mentioned with TV and digital out of home and with radio, we had to extend our hypothesis to try and prove out new results in new areas, and not just for prospects and subscriptions, because one of the things that has started to shift from just looking at our original models was we were always optimizing for CPA. CPA was a constant KPI for us, and it still is a constant KPI. It's absolutely king. But what we were finding is that we were finding there was a way to actually measure brand impact and be able to translate that directly into something like an inferred CPA down the line. So there was a chance with going up the funnel to actually be able to change brand perceptions and awareness, which was a huge goal for us into the current year. And so that's amplification, but what about specialization? What exactly does specialization mean for us, for a content company, for a newspaper? The question was, could we actually learn to understand not just the words around what people were looking at and what a machine can kind of process in a simplistic way, but could we actually start to understand the semantics of the world that our users and our readers were living in? On a point-by-point type of basis, maybe even to the level of a specific individual. So instead of targeting a group of, let's say, seasoned digital marketing professionals at a digital marketing conference in London, could I point out specific folks and know exactly how you were the history of your engagement with us or in content in general, and learn something about that and be able to find that specifically. So I think in order to solve that problem, to know who your individual potential customers are, there's a triangle of dynamics at work: effort, value, and delivering personalization from that. To solve for effort, we had to find a way to see where everyone was engaging with us, and that meant any type of media interaction, be it an impression on a website that you saw of a banner ad, or a Facebook article that you had clicked on, into our site, or a video from Economist films that we had put out about drone strikes. And to be able to solve for value, and this is really, for value, it's about value exchange is what I mean. It wasn't enough to know that as a user that you clicked on a site or a particular article, but really the question was, could we figure out why you clicked on that particular article and what was that article about? What was it actually saying? What was the actual message that was there? And to be able to solve to deliver personalization, we would need to understand on the effort side, on the value side, who you are, not just this visit, but who you are whenever you engage with us, and what are your patterns of what brought you in the first place, and where did you go after that, and when did you do that? And technology was a huge part of what was going to help us solve and combine all these pieces into really the ultimate, in my eyes, for one-to-one marketing, which is context. So to solve for effort, or otherwise like what I like to call what the hell are you doing, if anyone's implemented a multi-touch attribution platform, I feel you, I really do, especially if you had to working with all your partners and tagging all your impressions and redirecting every single click, building site-side pixels, and making sure your taxonomy was absolutely beautiful, because this will reveal incredible cracks in the foundation of what you've got, and can take a lot of time and effort, but I would say that it's worth it. And so when we implemented attribution, it became clear that attribution, what it was telling us, was not just about finding the engagement points, but actually understanding that the reality of a journey across channels is highly variable and highly complex. And hitting the user with the right content at the right time, at the right point in their conversion journey, was not a single output type of answer. I'm happy to go through this afterwards if anyone's interested. And then to weigh value and to solve for that, otherwise what I would call what the hell are you saying, Economist. As I mentioned earlier, the challenge here was to understand the content, not in the way that we understand it, not in the way that an editor or a writer understands it, but the challenge for us was actually to understand what it meant for you as a user. And I'm talking about the difference between metadata and meaning. And driving context in this way really showed that we were suffering from inconsistent to non-existent metadata across blogs, articles, anything that had been written over 173 years or so. And reams and reams of content. And we need some way to constantly, on a regular and automated basis, understand that semantically things and words mean different things to different people at different times. The word apple does not mean the same thing now as it did 10 years ago or 50 years ago. Even today, I mean, if I asked you to look at Trump president and Hillary president, I mean, they would mean very different things from today to yesterday to 10 years ago. So there had to be some mechanism at work here. And we're actually working with IBM's Watson and doing some tests with Google's natural language processing, also in this realm, to be able to automate that process. And so I'd mentioned that we needed something that was going to be able to understand not just the sort of the letters and the characters and the numbers that existed, but the semantic context for today's media consumer that would be flexible enough to be able to scan the entire corpus of content that we were feeding it, but also be sharp enough and flexible enough for us to wield it for specific campaigns that we wanted to. And then to deliver on personalization, which is really who the hell are you? The challenge is to understand the complexity of the user's intent over time. And that intent over time is actually an amalgamation of algorithms and behavior and science and psychology. We have to build and save an interest graph, essentially, as a profile for everyone interacting with our media in some way. So we're evaluating a bunch of partners in this space. I spoke to a couple partners here who have a platform also in play. We're working with some folks and chatting with them on a pilot basis. It's a company called Lytics, Signal, Insighten. You heard of these guys? And there's a challenge that I wanted to mention also about DMPs in this space. DMPs are cookie-based, as we all know, and they can limit the kind of dynamic data that they can deliver from one point to another. They work very, very well as data buses, but more and more we're actually seeing that DMPs can also have functionality to do lookalike modeling or do other sophisticated modeling, but some of the problems inside of that is that Facebook likes to do their own modeling, Google likes to do their own modeling. Every platform that likes to do their own modeling. And some of the problem I think for us as digital marketing leaders is that it behooves us to ask for some of this data as data ownership, because it's not really in Facebook's interest or Google's interest or anybody else's interest to share any of that data or the learnings that they get from the models that are successful. For us, we're paying for these services, so I would actually pose an argument to say, shouldn't we own this information over time? So just going back to the personalization for a second, and another one of the DMP's limitations. DMP's got limitations in general about maybe 3 months, where they consider the cookie to either be not fresh anymore. But we start to get into this area where we are in danger of losing important patterns that we can see only outside of 3 months. Even if you look at sports teams, for example, and seasons, and sort of patterns that exist that go, that have a cadence that are much longer than 3 months. It was a really important requirement for us to be able to store these profiles over time so that we can see this kind of performance over a longer period. Because the story is that adding all of this together, that you need to find and follow your prospects, and you need to figure out where they are and how they go and get to where they go. I'm just going to skip this for data fragmentation. So I'm just skipping ahead for time, and I just wanted to bring to your attention a TV case study I had mentioned. So we're back on TV. We just released a new commercial in North America. And if you told me that we were doing commercials a year ago or 2 years ago, I just would not believe you, because it seemed like a black box. You just throw tons of money into it and it would disappear. And you would hope somebody would maybe watch it at the end of Walking Dead or something. So, I mean, but apparently TV response is something that I had to learn, is completely trackable. And it's not directly trackable, but from a brand and actual a direct subscription perspective, you can actually track it. Because when we're looking at something that's wider, and it's not just about the KPIs around subscriptions, we're looking at brand, there's something inside of the fact that investment in awareness and market penetration actually correlate, because awareness creates demand. And some other research through IProspect, who we use for a couple of our global channels, there was a particular very interesting point in that when you align TV with digital at the same time, that in combination, not only in combination, can you actually drive purchase intent through that. And exposure to content creates an emotional reaction when combined with regular communications and marketing. So for every measurable metric that is out there, there is a positive correlation between exposure to content and anything that really creates that emotional response. And so these emotional responses become these kind of campaigns that we call fame campaigns. And we create fame which amplifies across all metrics and leave a lasting impression. And so the tracking, this is live data as of about 3 weeks ago. We've got trackable impacts in search, in PPC specifically, where you can see the brand lift that happens from a TV commercial running. Because there's a truth in behavior when you look at it, is that when someone watches a TV commercial, they're not going to go on their phones and then type in www.economist.com/smart this/whatever the hell it is. What they're doing is they're firing up Google, whatever it is, because it's on there, it's on your search bar, everything else, and you're just typing Economist. So we have now learned to actually be able to time these search campaigns around what we're doing so that we can match these things together. And that's really broken new frontiers for us. And in this, this case study, you see that it's actually reopened an old channel for us. Which brings me back to not lies, but the truth. And the truth is, we don't always know what we're doing, and that's kind of the key. Because what I mean by that is that every year we think about our strategy, we think about what we're doing, we think and see what's working and what's not, and we look at the data, we interrogate it, and we ask, what does it mean? What else can we learn? And then every month we tweak our strategies and we have our monthly meetings and we review our plans, and again we look at the data and we ask what's working and what's not. And then every week with our status meetings and every single day we actually are working to challenge, is what we're doing right now the best that we could be doing? Should we actually try and break things down and smash it up? But what we're trying to do is live close to our mantra, is to really push the limits of what's understandable and what's doable and just try them. The combination of marketing, technology is not just in platforms and data, but also the internal processes for joining these two, which is absolutely key. So hopefully this will encourage some further investigation and discussion here today, or hopefully inside of your own organizations. Thanks.